Greetings, gamers. Hoser here for Hoser House Rules. Welcome back. We haven't posted in quite a while, so we're going to try to shoot a couple things today and hopefully post them in the next few days. The first thing I want to talk about today is terrain. So cheap, simple, easy terrain. So let me show you what I use for terrain. Basically, anytime I'm doing a game on a 2x2 foot area with 50mm figures. So let's take a look at the table. So here we have our Barker marker and some Boltman. So that's a nice 40mm for zone of control. So the first thing I want to talk about is the types of materials that I use. Now, let's start with hills. You could use commercially available hills. This one would be way too large for what I do. But the problem with these is if they have any height at all, you're going to encounter some difficulties when, see, it just kind of slides back. If you're just right at the edge, it's kind of problematic if you have any height on it at all. So even though this is better looking and more realistic, I prefer much flatter hills. So let me look at some hills here. So the first material and the main material that I use is your basic floor tile, like 99 cents at Home Depot, adhesive in the back. You can get different kinds of very nice brown texture. My hills are about 6 inches by 4 inches, so you could get 6 hills out of just one 99-cent floor tile. All right, so let's take a look at some of those hills. So basically, now this is a hill, and as you can see, there's absolutely no problem in going up to a hill when it's this low. I mean, it doesn't look as great, but you get a nice brown texture, and there's no problem at all with moving the troops onto the hill. I just put a line down the middle for a ridge line. You could do it with a grease pencil. I don't know if this would even take a permanent marker because it is a floor tile, so it is meant to be cleaned off and wiped off. So, like I said, you can get 6 of these. I cut them into 6 by 4 and just round off the corners a little bit, and that's my basic hill. Let me show you another material that I use for hills. This ceiling material, it's not self-adhesive, so it's just black in the back. It does have this really nice stony sort of texture to it. This is just some kind of ceiling material. You can get it at Home Depot. And it is somewhat pliable, but it's fairly firm. So again, very low to the floor and no problem at all. You can cut this with scissors or whatever. And it does have a really nice texture. It is pretty hard to put a ridge line down it. This would probably work better. It would work with a grease pencil, but probably better with a permanent marker. But it's hard to see because of the texture. So I like the texture of this a lot, but I like the floor tile better just because you can ride on it and it's all right. So you'll see this material again. So those are basically hills, about 6 by 4. The last material and the most common material that I use is just your basic felt. Okay, so we're talking about something that you can get at Michael's, you can get at your hobby store. It comes in sheets about this big. You can buy them individually or in packs of different colors. You know, they come in blue, green, gray, brown. So they're useful for everything. You could do everything just on felt. So this could be a hill, or it could be rough terrain, or it could be a dune. And again, no problem putting figures onto it. This is much more flexible though, so I don't like it for hills because it does tend to move easily. I would use this for rough terrain or maybe woods, which we're going to talk about next. So, let me show you a couple other things you can do with felt. It's very easy to draw on it with a marker. So these could be camps, or they could be a built-up area, or they could be a readout. It's just felt, colored with a marker, and it looks really nice and very simple to make. Okay, so hills. That's about it for hills. The next most common piece of terrain that I have on the board is forest. Now, for forest, I always use felt. And you want something, you know, not much longer than 6 inches by 4 inches wide, and just kind of circular. And again, very easy to move across it if you need to. So I always use felt for forest, and then you can get some commercially available trees to make it look more forestry. But these trees are going to end up inevitably getting moved as you move through a forest. If you do, you're going to have to move them or just take them off. But they look great with, you know, a nice tree in the forest. It looks great. So basically for woods, I use green felt, different colors of green felt, with occasionally a commercially available tree on it. Then for my games, each side on a 2x2 board would roll for 2 pieces of terrain randomly. So 1 through 3 you get a hill, and 4, 5 you get a woods. So you're going to get woods and hills mostly. On a 6 you get some special terrain, and I'm now going to discuss some of the special terrains that I use. The first and probably most common is the built-up area. Now, for the built-up area, what I like to do is get this sample Home Depot 6x6 inch. I think this is industrial carpet, something like that. And I just take this and I cut it into 4 pieces. Just cut it into 4 pieces. Anything like 2 inches by 2 inches or 3 inches by 3 inches would do. This also has a really nice grain going across it and nice shades of green. So you could use this for a field, you know, like a wheat field or something like that. So I just cut it into 4 pieces, and this is basically my built-up areas. So that's just it. That's a built-up area. It's about 2x2. These would be 3x3 because they're quarters of 6x6. And I have some commercially available painted buildings, which you can add to the built-up areas. And even if you do, you can see there's still plenty of room for a stand to be in it. So this carpet sample works really, really great, and it's got other uses too, like fields or whatever if you want. But again, you could just go with felt. Here's a bigger felt piece, and what I did is I cut out some yellow felt and just made it into like little houses and a perimeter with like some towers. And again, this would be great for a built-up area. I think it's a little big for a 2x2 board, but it'll do fine. I also use these for camps, right? And the only difference being is if I use the carpet or the felt, for a camp, instead of putting a building on it, I would just put a tent on it. So this works great for a camp. Again, plenty of room for the, if you're playing DBA, for the camp followers to be inside the camp. It's a good size for a camp. Or a built-up area, about 3x3, something like that, built-up areas, or camps, felt or floor sample, carpet sample. But you can again use the roofing material, cut to about 3x3, right, for either a camp or a built-up area. Again, you can just put a building on it, and plenty of room for your 40 millimeter element to fit into it. So carpet sample, felt, roofing material, about 3x3, all good for built-up areas or camps. The next terrain I want to talk about is rivers. Now I don't usually allow a lot of rivers. Usually there's a small chance of getting a river, but they do happen sometimes, and sometimes they are appropriate for a scenario. So rivers are pretty simple. Again, using felt, and I'm taking almost a foot-long piece of felt from the original full size sample that you can get in different colors. So obviously this is light blue. And what I do is, it's about 1 inch wide, and this works fine for rivers. It's really cheap. I mean, this much river costs like 20 cents, I don't know. What I like to do is just add some color to it. I add some blue and some green, because there would be some plants and some black for rocks. But the important thing about rivers is I like to have a ford, because it gets kind of complicated without a ford. A lot of scenarios require a ford. So this green area between these two green lines, and also here between these two green lines, that is a ford. So I don't put the ford in the center of the river. I put it about 1/3 of the way in. So if you are, if you want the fords towards the outside of the map edge, then you would have your fords away from the center, or you can move one closer to the center and one towards the side, or you can have both towards the center. Of course, if there were the thing about the fords is I like to make them 2 elements wide. So they're just over 80 millimeters. So two elements can cross at the same time. Very simple, 1 inch wide, felt, a little color, a little ford, 80 millimeters, slightly over 80 millimeters wide, and you got your river for a 2-foot table going across. So that is the simplest, cheapest, and pretty decent looking way to go with a river. All right, another terrain that happens occasionally is your walls. Now, I bought this commercially available wall. Obviously, I haven't colored it or flocked it, but it is fine, except the size wasn't specified. I got a bunch of these. I mean, there may be like 6 or 8. So I can make a nice perimeter or something, but that doesn't really happen in a DBA-ish game. So 4 inches is just not a good size for me. You can hold 2.5 elements behind it. It's just not an ideal size. Although this is quite usable if you want to put in some wall around, maybe next to a built-up area or something. That works just fine. But again, 4 inches is not great. So I make my own walls, and basically what I do is I'm going to take just some poster board. This is 10 millimeters across. Then, if you could see, right at the bottom of the poster board, I've put a line of putty or clay. You can use ticky-tack, whatever you want. Just something that's soft and sticks will get into. So I glue the clay, just a thin line of clay at the bottom. Then I take sticks. You can use any kind of sticks. I cut these at a 45-degree angle on both ends. First, because that way it'll penetrate into the clay, and I glue them in there. And then it kind of looks like stakes or a pointed palisade. And these are 40 millimeters across. So when I roll for walls, what I do is take 3 of these, and that works out really well. So I'm going to show you a more finished product. These are basically stakes. Again, they have some clay at the bottom. This one is 15 millimeters poster board. Clay at the bottom. And these are just twigs that I found under a tree that I cut, again, at an angle. The bottom and the top, so it'll stick into the clay and show sharp ends on the outside. And this is 40 millimeters, so it works perfectly with your DBA stands, 15 millimeter stands. So when I roll for walls, what I do is I do 3 of these. And that's more flexible than a 4-inch wall, because you can have them together and that'll fit 3 stands. Or you could separate them as you wish. Or if you happen to have some artillery or you want a strong defensive position, you can make a redoubt out of 3 pieces. And so this, let's say it's an artillery unit or whatever, could pivot and face in different directions and still be in cover. So that is hills, woods, built-up areas, camps, walls, and I think that is it. Am I missing anything? Rivers, walls, built-up areas. That's about it for the special.
Yeah, that's all we use for DBA.
All right, so let me just show you one last material I use. This is also felt, but it's a lot thicker. So it's not as flexible. It's quite flexible, but it's not as flexible as just regular felt. But it does take color very well. I just water down some craft paint and use a sponge to dab different colors in areas where I want. I would use this more for gaming area than for terrain, but it is completely easy to make hills out of this. You can make rivers out of this, waterways out of this. I have some nice waterways that I've made from a dark blue one. You can make swamps out of this. In fact, I have a swamp right here, made from this thicker felt material, dark blue, just with some green, a dab on with, again, watered down craft paint with some green, some blue, some brown, and it looks like a really great swamp. So that's the last material I used, the thicker felt stuff. It's not as flexible, but it is sturdy. This would also be good for anything. I mean, rivers, woods, hills, built-up areas, roads, whatever you want. So that is it for today. I hope you got some useful information as far as how to make really cheap and easy terrain. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you. If you like the information, please hit the like button. If you'd like to subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll probably do whatever you want. I mean, if you want me to do more terrain stuff, we could do that. I'm next going to be doing a review of some Dark City Games materials. They have some solitaire role-playing materials, program and adventures. So I'm going to be doing that next. And after that, hopefully we'll get to a battle. But seriously, I'd love to see some comments and some questions. So if you have any questions about Cheap Terrain, or if you liked this post, please give it a like, and we will see you at the table.